Welcome in and welcome back to another video, everybody. Today we have something that I've been wanting to do for a while now. So I decided to post on both YouTube and on Twitter. Give me some of your Souls hot takes. Now, this can be anything from Elden Ring to Dark Souls to FromSoft itself. Now, let me tell you, I got way too many replies, probably over 1,000 different hot takes. Ain't no way I'm going to be able to do all of them, but there may be multiple episodes. If you do enjoy them, then remember to leave a like before heading out. So, let me just again reiterate. This is hot takes. Some of these are going to be kind of ridiculous. All I'm going to be doing is reading them and giving you my opinion as somebody who has played these games for like 10 plus years, right? You may have a different opinion than me and these people. Obviously, there's no need to go hate on anybody. But feel free to also, by the way, leave your own opinions in the comments down below. But again, there are some of these that are kind of ridiculous. So let's go ahead and just start off with one that a lot of people had similar opinions. So I thought I'd just go ahead and throw this one in here. This person's hot take is they need to stop pushing the games to be harder. People like me who enjoy the simplicity of the combat are slowly being pushed out because FromSoft is catering to the extremely get good portion of the player base. While I also don't agree of like the simplicity of the combat of Souls games, I can understand that, right? And at the end of the day, if you really want to keep it to its basics, it is the circle button to roll, R1 to do an attack, and then R2 to do a heavy attack. You also got Ashes of War, which kind of do spice up the game and is supposed to add a little bit more to that simplistic combat, you know, in parentheses, I would say. But that combat wouldn't be as satisfying if it wasn't difficult, because the most memorable bosses for me are always the bosses that I take a while on. You know, the Melanias of the world, the Manuses, the Ornstein and the Smos. These bosses for me are some that are very much ingrained into my memory because sometimes they took me an hour, sometimes they took me 2 hours. I understand that some people don't like that, but I feel that is what makes Souls games memorable. And having that experience is something you don't really have. If you remove the difficulty of it, then it's just simple combat. You know, and at the end of the day as well, it's an RPG, right? You can make it as difficult as you want. Listen, use the cheesiest builds, right? Do whatever you want. It's an RPG. Use the most OP shit. Use Rivers of Blood, you know, if you're struggling with Elden Ring. Use the Lotic Knight Straight Sword if you're struggling with Dark Souls 3. It's up to you in this RPG to level yourself and make OP builds. Use Pyromancies if you're struggling in Dark Souls 1. You know, do whatever you can to make yourself as strong as you want to be. And at the end of the day, that's what I love about Souls games. It's only as difficult as you make it up until you reach truly a boss that is a skill check. And you know what boss isn't a goddamn skill check? The Bed of Chaos. If the Bed of Chaos had a tiny run back, it would just be remembered as a silly yet incredibly unique boss fight. That being said, reliance on frictionless / non-existent runbacks makes the game less interesting overall. First of all, we'll go with the first part, right? Bed of Chaos. I very much disagree. I think Bed of Chaos, while yes, a little bit unique, is just so flawed in general that it doesn't work the way that it should in Dark Souls 1. I think it would be a boss that would work a lot better in a game like Elden Ring, especially with jumps. Because imagine instead of having to roll past the big swipes of the tree that have sometimes very broken hitboxes, you'd be able to jump over them. Again, if it was an Elden Ring, the boss would be so much better in my opinion. The floor breaking under you is pretty cool, but then landing on a tiny little branch as this stupid ass big hitbox tree is trying to hit you, I do not like that boss in general at all. Even if it had a goddamn, I spawned right in front of the boss every single time. The runback is just an extra punch in the dick. Now, it's not a runback that is necessarily like tough, because you do just kind of run by enemies. It's just long. Now, while I do agree that a little runback is nice every once in a while, because it gives you time to think, right? It gives you time to be like, okay, what did I do wrong in that fight? What could I have changed so that I try a different tactic or do something better to be able to kill the boss? I understand the idea of a run back, but at the end of the day, if I wanted to do that as well in Elden Ring, that has obviously for some of the bigger bosses, the stake of Marika's like right there, I would just sit still and wait and just think about it for a moment. You know what I mean? Like it accomplishes the same thing without having to run past a bunch of enemies. And at the end of the day, if a runback is annoying, you don't really have time to think a lot because you're dodging 16 enemies to get to the boss fight, which can be incredibly annoying. So while yes, I do agree that like a small runback every once in a while is nice, I don't think a runback that is tiny would have made the Bed of Chaos a better boss. Sekiro has the best leveling system and difficulty tuning of any FromSoft game. I agree. Honestly, I think that this game is the hardest to level yourself up in terms of becoming overpowered to fight enemies and bosses. This is one of the games, because obviously, while it is still, is it even considered an RPG? I actually don't even really think so, because it's not an RPG and it's more of an action game. You can't really level yourself up to a crazy amount for some of the bosses. A lot of the bosses you're just gonna straight up have to face, and if you're getting your ass whooped, you are gonna have to get better at the game, get better at dodging, get better at deflecting, find their weakness. And while there are still things that are overpowered and make the game much easier, you can't really just find a boss, get stuck on it, and then go farm a bunch of Albinorics so that you can get yourself 30 more levels to be more overpowered and have more HP. You're just not going to do that in Sekiro. It's straight up skill. So I do agree that Sekiro has the best leveling system and difficulty tuning for any of these Souls games, or FromSoft games. Soulsborne Sekiro. Now here's an interesting one, because a lot of people also had this same sentiment about Elden Ring. So Elden Ring is the most and least replayable Souls-like they released. When you replay it, you don't want to explore. You just want to grab the things for your build. Then you have to ride torrent, bored out of your mind, best replayed after a while so you forget the details. Now let me just say, the first playthrough of Elden Ring is one of the greatest experiences in my memory. 100 plus hours of exploring bosses, riding torrent even, giving him nicknames. Subsequent playthroughs after that, I kind of have to agree. In my opinion, it is one of the ones that is the hardest to replay and has the lowest replayability value. Not to say it has zero, because honestly your second playthrough is still going to be fun, but it is very similar to what he's saying. I don't want to explore every single nook and cranny again. I want to grab the things for my build, things that I know where they are, you know, and then make my build. I don't necessarily want to go into every single cave that exists in the game. I don't want to fight every single mini boss. I don't want to go to every corners of every region like I did on my first playthrough. And because the world is so massive, it makes it a little bit difficult to want to do that sometimes. And I do agree, the best second playthrough or third playthrough of this game will be when you've forgotten a lot of the details. Now I go through that often just because I play a shit ton of different games, including all of the other different Souls games, and then I come back to Elden Ring and I forget where a lot of things are, or which bosses there are, or what the boss movesets are, because so many of them are jumbled in together, that it makes it fun still. But overall, I agree. Your third playthrough, fourth playthrough, honestly, you're not going to be exploring, you're not going to want to explore, you're going to want to go grab your things. I miss tail cuts. And goddamn it, you know what? Me too, man. Me too. This isn't even a hot take. This is a good take. Tail cuts should exist in Elden Ring in the future games. I know that you can cut off the tails of a lot of bosses in previous games, especially Dark Souls 1. Made a nice little comeback with Night Rain as well, seeing a Dark Souls 1 boss in there. I hope that this is a thing that we see again in the future. The idea of being able to cut off a piece of the boss and aim for a specific part to get like a weapon. And listen, I get it, right? If you end up screwing it up, then you kind of are boned and you kind of had to go to New Game Plus to get that thing again. And this was another hot take that I'll mention here because I don't have the screenshot of it, because I honestly, again, over 1,000 different replies and I lost it at one point. Somebody mentioned that bonfire aesthetics should be brought back. And I absolutely freaking agree, man. Bonfire aesthetics were such a cool addition that Dark Souls 2 had. For people like me especially, because as much as I do like playing a lot of the Souls games, and I'll go back and I'll do a couple playthroughs, a couple different builds, sometimes if I mess up something like this, and I don't get the tail cut, popping a bonfire aesthetic, going through the area again, refining the boss and trying again right away, would feel the best. I would absolutely love that. But tail cuts, absolutely. I agree. They should make a return, and I hope they do in the future. Elden Ring lore kinda sucks. Didn't feel anything at all when the final boss was revealed. While I don't agree that the lore itself sucks, I agree that it tells it in such a way in Elden Ring, and I guess in all Souls games, but especially Elden Ring, because there's so many items that it's really hard to keep up with it if you're not reading every single little item, because sometimes stories can be interconnected between items that have nothing to do with each other and just mention a little piece, a little throwaway piece that has something to do with a very important character. But I would agree, when it comes to the reveal of Radagon, that was a hype as fuck moment. When it came to the reveal of the Elden Beast, while it was cool to see the cutscene and everything, I also didn't really feel anything. Yes, it was cool to look at, but in terms of the whole idea of there being like aliens and creatures that come from space, seeing Estelle for the first time to me was more memorable and more shocking when it comes to the story than Elden Beast was. Just kind of being a big blob. You know, I also kind of feel like I didn't feel anything when I saw him. And I still don't think he's a great boss, I'm gonna be honest, even with the addition of adding Torrent. Actually thinking about it, I have not gone back to fight that boss since Torrent was added. Maybe it is different. Maybe, you know what, I'm just speaking out of my ass. Maybe it is different, you guys could let me know. Honestly, I have no idea. But Elden Beast itself, not a great boss. Not a great boss. Strength players are no better than sorcery users in Elden Ring. You can't talk shit about sorceries being brain dead when your entire gimmick is do so biggest poise bonk you can on repeat. Okay, even though this guy had a stroke at the end, listen, I get what he's trying to say, right? Strength users, big bonk, ain't no better than sorceries. I disagree. Nope. You guys ain't doing this. And a lot of people had this opinion too. There was multiple hot takes of people saying that like any other type of build shouldn't be making fun of sorceries, because I guess that is kind of the meme, especially for sorceries, right? Not even because of the strength of the build, but sorceries, you're very much out of danger a lot of the time. I think that's why a lot of people say that it's not as impressive as like a strength build, right? You're out of danger. Yes, you do have a shit ton of really strong spells. It can be pretty dangerous as well if you don't level up dexterity and you're really slow. But overall, you have strong spells. You are almost always out of range of the boss and running away. With a strength build or another type of build, you're in its face, taking a lot of risks, trying to get hits. It's just the risk factor isn't the same. And I think that's why sorceries, it isn't as impressive as something like a strength run or a dex run. If your main focus is spells or incantations, it isn't the same. But again, my opinion. The undead female merchant is way hotter than Guinevere. Y'all are just blind. And listen guys, I said we were doing hot takes, not facts, alright? Try a little bit better next time, not to rage bait with just facts. Alright, it's not funny. Everdark Libra is the funniest boss of Night Rain. Bosses such as Gladius and Fulgor are incredibly clean, and it's a joy to fight them. But the unpredictability of Libra's summons always makes you wonder if you will win. Also, less likely to be targeted changes the battle completely. That is actually true. But when it comes to Everdark Libra, I am going to be honest, I kind of agree. He legitimately is the most fuck you boss in Night Rain. He's a boss that always is like a complete toss-up. Either you are going to get absolutely stomped, or it's going to be a really close fight. To be honest, you rarely ever, at least personally, beat the absolute living shit out of Everdark Libra. Let me just say, every single time I've encountered him, which is a shit ton, surprising, like 10 times in Deep of Night, I still haven't fucking beat him. And that just goes to show how stupid this goddamn boss can be. But it's always funny to see him spawn, because you almost like, at least for me personally, I accept the fact as soon as he comes out, or I go, we're probably going to lose points here. And you know what? I'm happy to have that, because the fight overall in general is still crazy. It's just pure chaos. So I gotta agree. Everdark Libra is probably the funniest boss in Night Rain. even though he's such a bitch. No hit runs and level 1 runs are not the highest skill ceiling in a Souls game. Becoming skilled at PvP is far more difficult. Now, while I agree that both are pretty tough to do, they're not the same. They really aren't. I think they're two different branching paths, right? No hit runs are something that, in my opinion, and I've said this before, anybody can do. It just takes so much commitment, so much practice, because that's what it is. It's commitment, it's practice. Every boss has very similar movesets that is something that you can learn. You know what's coming, right? They hit 3 or 4 times. You have this window, hit there, then you dodge. Every area has a route that is very specific, and especially a lot of these no hit runs kind of take very similar routes because they have the least amount of danger. Yes, there is obviously so much unpredictability. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's just incredibly high level of commitment and time and practice that 98% of the Souls community will never do it because of that, which in itself is an incredible skill. The skill of patience. And you can say the same for Soul level 1 runs. The patience to kind of just keep attacking even though you're gonna get one shot, right? Everything has to be perfect in a level 1 run. You have to do every single boss essentially without getting hit. You can take a couple hits here and there when it's not a big attack, but 90% of the attacks from every single boss is going to kill you. So essentially you kind of have to do everything damn near perfect. But again, it's just commitment. It's time consuming, so it's something that not a crazy amount of people are going to do. PvP, on the other hand, you're always kind of at a disadvantage. Most of the time, especially in Elden Ring, you're going to be getting ganked. And I guess I'm talking about invasions. I'm not talking about like arena itself, but PvP in general is very cheesy. I think it's much easier to go into PvP and get a shit ton of kills, especially with like some cheesy build, than it is to do like a level 1 run. I think the commitment that you would need to be skilled in PvP is much less than it would be if you did something like a no hit run. At least this is my own personal opinion. It really also depends on the game. You know, there's so much different cheesiness, there's so much tech. If we're just talking straight up 2 people fighting, no cheesy bullshit, it can be very tough. Some people are very, very good at this game, but I wouldn't necessarily say one takes more skill than the other or is like the higher skill ceiling. They're just kind of different. FromSoft are going to hit a wall with the Souls style combat where the boss speed / particle effects, spam, etc. has gone too far. They haven't hit it yet, but a new combat system would be cool, assuming you aren't counting Armored Core. While I do agree that some type of new system would be fun, they always seem to be innovating. Like you said, they haven't run into that wall yet, and they've been doing this shit for almost 20 years at this point. Like seriously, from like Demon Souls, if you even want to count like Kingsfield and stuff like that, even way before then, right? But if we're just counting the Souls style combat with Demon Souls, they haven't hit it yet. And honestly, I think they're still kind of getting a hang of like mixing a bunch of different styles together. The games are either increasing in speed or adding something like Sekiro, which are deflects. Look at where Sekiro went, right? It completely went to left field of the combat style from Souls games, and in my opinion is the greatest combat in any video game. Not only that, but now so many games have adapted that style of combat of Sekiro and put it into their games. Hell, just look at Liza P, right? So many different Souls-likes have deflects now, and pretty much all of them stemmed from Sekiro, and that was a game that was a side from Dark Souls. Look at Bloodborne with its rally system. Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring having horse combat, Ashes of War, stuff like that. Spirit summons that change up the combat so much. While I do agree that maybe there might be a tipping point of like the speed of bosses and the particle effect spam, I think they still have quite a ways to go. It's still a spectacle to see a crazy ass boss like Placidusax that has this huge particle effect spam with like its nuke explosions, or like a Medeer with its giant laser slashes. It's still insane to see that. I don't think they're very close to hitting it, and honestly I can't see them hitting it. I feel like they do a pretty good balance of like bosses that are very much grounded, something like Champion Gunder and bosses on a smaller scale to kind of counteract the big spectacle bosses. And they usually do a pretty good job to balance those. So I actually don't think that there will be a tipping point for that. Now, when it comes to the combat itself, I would love to see a nice mixture of the combat. I would love to if the next single player game had a cool mixture of like the Sekiro combat as well. I think they could improve even more on the deflect system, and maybe we will see that in the next single player FromSoft game. And most likely we're gonna see that with Duskbloods as well, by the way. I guess for people who are willing to play it, I'd assume the combat is gonna be very different in that game, considering it is mainly PvP focused. I'm so curious about that game still. So we'll see what happens when that game comes out, at least. Every boss after Morgott is bad except Placidus Axe. No. Not today. Not today. Apart from exploitable bugs / exploiting the AI, there is no such thing as cheese or cheese builds. It's an RPG. You're not cheesing the fight if you're equipping yourself with the tools the game gave you to handle that situation specifically. Now, a lot of people actually do have this opinion, and I will say I very much disagree. While I do agree, by the way, that you can use whatever you want, right? You can do whatever. You can be the shield guy who just does R1 pokes through a shield and never has his stamina run out. You can be the Rivers of Blood guy. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's your game. But I also do think that there are levels. You can't be on the same level. And when it comes to level, I mean like level of bragging, right? And at the end of the day, there's just, this is not to brag about shit. But let's just give Prime Consort Radon as an example, right? Some guy who went in there at a normal Skadutri level, at a normal rune level, beat him with a normal weapon, dodging R1s, R2s, weapon arts, all that good stuff. That would not be in the same category as a guy like the guy with the massive shield who just went in there, tanked every single hit, pressed R1, and just cheesed the fuck out of the boss. They are not on the same level of impressiveness, I guess, if you want to use that word. Again, you can use whatever you want. Just don't brag about beating a boss if all you did literally is not participate in the combat of the game. Yes, you have a lot of tools in the game. It's an RPG. You can make yourself as strong as you want. But again, if you say equipping yourself with tools the game gave you to handle that situation specifically, would you say that somebody who is level 650 going into New Game 0 Radon is the same impressiveness as some dude who did it at like Soul Level 1? I just really don't think so. But again, you can use whatever you want. The tools are in there. You can use them. There's just, if you're talking about like bragging and stuff like that, there's really no point in bragging when it's a very clearly cheesy build. You know what I mean? There are cheese builds, which is the fun part about this game as well, and Souls games in general. You can make these builds and do stupid stuff that just obliterates bosses, and that's the fun part of it. And I enjoy those parts as well. But I'm also not going to be putting those on the same level as when I beat Melania at level 1, if I went in there with a build where I just nuked her. So those are very different things, in my opinion. I thought I'd end it with this one, because I feel like a lot of people do have this opinion of like, I should be on the same level as somebody who beat the game normally if all I did was summon 2 of my over-leveled friends and all my spirit summons and stuff like that. Like, yeah, you beat the game, but at the end of the day, there is difficulties. A lot of people say there's not difficulty levels to this game, but there are. There's stuff in an RPG that are going to make the RPG way easier, and they're going to be stuff that makes it much harder as well. That's where your difficulty levels lie in all of these games and the Souls games. So that is my opinion about this, but there's so many. We for sure will do another episode, I think. But I appreciate everybody watching. If you made it this far, a like is very much appreciated. Have yourselves a good one, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye, everybody.